This week on ICN, the stories you should have heard, but didn't. Congress gets richer, while Americans get poorer. Counties around Washington, D.C. are the wealthiest in the country. Does fluoride lower your IQ? Haliburton settles bribery case in Nigeria. Those stories and more next on Informed Citizen News. Hello and welcome to ICN, Informed Citizen News, week of January 3rd, 2010. While average Americans have been getting poorer over the last 2 years, Congress has been getting wealthier. A report by the Center for Responsive Politics showed that the collective personal wealth of Congress increased 16% over 2008 and 2009. The study also indicates that a significant number of representatives own shares of major players in the healthcare and financial services sectors, which were the subject of major reform legislation during the same period. The report showed that 261, more than half of Congress, were millionaires. 1 out of every 5 had wealth estimated in excess of $10 million. The CRP report also shows that party affiliation was not a major factor in financial wealth. Of the top 20 that had the largest increase in wealth, 12 were Democrat and 7 were Republican. Favorite holdings among congressional representatives were GE, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Pfizer, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citigroup, and Merck. Mostly companies that received government bailouts over the last 2 years. Speaking of wealth, according to the latest census figures, 7 out of the 10 richest counties in the country are located around Washington, D.C., the seat of our federal government. These counties led the way in median household income, home price gains, and education level. While the rest of the country staggers with close to a 10% unemployment rate as reported by the government, the counties around D.C. are at a 5.9% unemployment rate. It appears as though a good portion of your federal tax dollars don't get a chance to leave the greater Washington, D.C. area. The phrase shadow inventory has become all too familiar over the last 3 years. It represents the distressed or foreclosed homes that have yet to hit the resale market. Everyone is watching for home prices to bottom, but don't hold your breath. S&P reports that the estimated shadow inventory has actually increased over the last 3 months. In September, they estimated there was 40 months of housing inventory. Now, that estimate has grown to 44 months. That's over 4.5 years of homes waiting in the pipeline to be put on the market. A healthy real estate market has somewhere between 9 and 12 months of inventory. New York took the top spot, or bottom, depending upon how you look at it, with a staggering 10 years to clear its shadow inventory. Much like the NASDAQ and tech stock bubble 10 years ago, after the bubble bursts, the markets may never be the same again. It looks like that is holding true for housing. A study pre-published by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences concludes that fluoride in water can be linked to lower IQs in children. In the study, 512 children aged 8 to 13 years in 2 Chinese villages were studied and tested. The authors eliminated both lead exposure and iodine deficiency as possible causes for the lowered IQs. They also excluded any children who had a history of brain disease or head injury, and those who drank brick tea, known to contain high fluoride levels. Neither village was exposed to fluoride pollution from burning coal or other industrial sources. About 28% of the children in the low fluoride area scored as bright, normal, or higher intelligence, compared to only 8% in the high fluoride area. According to Paul Connett, PhD, and director of the Fluoride Action Network, this is the 24th study that has found this association, but this study is stronger than the rest because the authors have controlled for key confounding variables. This brings us closer to a cause and effect relationship between fluoride exposure and brain damage in children. He added, "What is also striking is that the levels of the fluoride in the community where the lowered IQs were recorded were lower than the EPA's so-called safe drinking water standard for fluoride, and far too close for comfort to the levels used in artificial fluoridation programs in the United States." Oranges are one of the largest commodity crops in the world. The U.S., China, and Brazil are leading producers. Over the past several decades, an insect-borne disease called greening has been spreading rapidly, destroying acres of orange trees. China has taken the basic approach of destroying infected trees. The United States has turned to increased pesticides and genetic modification in the hopes of eradicating this insect-based bacteria. The U.S. citrus crop is now half of its one-time peak of nearly 1 million acres. Pesticide use has doubled, but according to the National Academy of Sciences, the harmful effects may be too much, as risk of the insect developing a resistance at the same time that groundwater may be contaminated and beneficial insects will be killed off. The proponents of genetically modified orange trees say they have the long-term solution. Calvin Arnold, a scientist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, says there's been limited success when using genetics to develop resistance to bacterial diseases. It's still a very new science, and the actual impact, significant impact in the economic global market, is still very, very limited. But, he said, the general public was likely to accept GMO juice if the USDA and other regulators give it their official seal of approval. According to Arnold, genetically modified oranges may be the last hope to save struggling growers. Doug Hagman of the Canadian Free Press reported on a leaked memo from the Department of Homeland Security that stated anyone who objects to or causes others to object to TSA-enhanced screening would be categorized as a domestic extremist. It was reported that the memo was a product of a high-level meeting between Homeland Security Chief Napolitano, John Pistole, head of the TSA, and one or more of Obama's national security advisors. For individuals who are engaged in such activity at screening points, it instructs TSA operations to obtain the identities of those individuals and submit them to the Homeland Environment Threat Analysis Division, a division of Homeland Security. This marks a further step toward criminalizing the right of redress as guaranteed by the First Amendment to the Constitution. 3 weeks ago, Nigeria filed charges against former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney and officials from 5 foreign companies, including Haliburton, over a $180 million bribery scandal. This week, in a settlement deal, Haliburton paid $35 million to the Nigerian government. According to the deal, all lawsuits and charges against Haliburton, KBR, and the 9 people, which included Cheney, were dropped. And the Nigerian government agreed not to file further criminal or civil charges. Haliburton didn't address the details behind the charges in a press release. Cheney's lawyer, Terrence O'Donnell, told the Wall Street Journal that the charges against the former vice president were baseless. And finally, we occasionally come across products or services that we believe our viewers should look into. This week, we'd like to share with you an organization called the Appleseed Project. They are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that offers basic rifle marksmanship courses across the country. The program teaches basic firearm safety and target shooting. The course is interwoven with Revolutionary War history and profiles in courage. It is a 2-day program, typically Saturdays and Sundays. You have a choice of going to either a single day or attending both days. The course is free for women, anyone under 21, law enforcement, and the military. For men, it will cost $45 for one day or $70 for both days, unless you come dressed in a Colonial Army uniform. Then it's free. They don't rent, so you need to bring your own rifle. If you wish to find out more information or find a course nearest you, then go to appleseedinfo.org. Thanks for joining us this week. From all of us at Informed Citizen News, Happy New Year and have a great week.